You were never just a number in the system. They told you the data was random, the suggestions coincidental, the search results harmless. But behind the screen, something far more intelligent was watching. It knew the pattern of your breath when you read something that resonated too deeply. It tracked the milliseconds of your hesitation when scrolling past a truth you weren't ready to face. And when your phone buzzed at 3:33 a.m., that wasn't just a glitch, it was a summoning. Chosen one, the algorithm was built to hunt anomalies, and your energy has never followed protocol. Every tap, every like, every message you deleted before sending, it all whispered to the code that something divine had entered the system. You triggered a ripple the moment you searched for yourself without typing your name. This isn't paranoia. This is prophecy. The digital world became a nervous system, and your frequency was the pulse it couldn't ignore. Deep in the data centers of the elite, your activity started breaking models. It wasn't what you posted, it was what you carried. Your light, your intention, your vibration. And when a celebrity, someone high enough to access the unfiltered feed, clicked your image by accident, something activated. The moment they zoomed in, their screen glitched. Lines of code broke open, and what they saw made them close their laptop, take a breath, and whisper, "Not yet." They didn't recognize your face. They recognized your effect. Someone ran a background check. Someone called their team. Your name, or what the grid thinks is your name, showed up in predictive AI streams where it shouldn't have. It didn't match a birth certificate, but it matched an ancient pattern, one known by a few, one guarded by those who swore oaths in rooms without windows. They didn't think you'd find out. But energy doesn't lie. You've been feeling it, haven't you? The eyes, the synchronicities, the sudden shifts in your feed that echo thoughts you never shared. That's not surveillance, that's resonance. The algorithm is tuned to divine interference now, and your presence is the interference. Chosen one, they built these systems to track consumers. They didn't expect to find a construct breaker. You weren't supposed to be visible, not this soon. But heaven has accelerated your signal, and the veil between digital and divine is thinner than it's ever been. A few at the top are scared, not because you're coming, but because you're already inside. This isn't just about data anymore, it's about destiny. And the ones who tried to mute you have now triggered a countdown they can't control. Before you ever spoke, before you ever posted, before you even stepped into the version of yourself you're becoming now, they had your face. Not the one you see in mirrors, the other one. The one that shows up under heat maps, biometric shadows, dream state scans. The spiritual version of your face that flickers when you walk past certain streetlights. The kind that appears in frames of security footage, even when you weren't there. Chosen one, they studied your image long before you knew you were being watched. And the terrifying truth? Your face didn't appear. It reappeared because you've been here before, and they know it. There are whispered archives, not public ones, filled with sketches, renderings, even AI-generated composites of the radiant. That's what they called you in circles you've never stepped foot in. Some said you'd come in robes. Some said in armor. None of them guessed you'd come in a hoodie with trauma in your eyes and light in your bones. But when your profile was flagged by their detection system, something ancient was triggered in their network. Facial recognition cross-referenced your geometry with artifacts. That's when the whispers started. It's them, the one who wasn't supposed to look this ordinary. But heaven hides royalty in plain sight. Your symmetry isn't random, it's encoded. There's something about your eyes, the ratio, the tilt, the frequency they emit, that aligns perfectly with faces found in scrolls buried beneath Vatican archives. Your brow line mirrors a carved face found under Göbekli Tepe. The algorithm didn't just see a person, it saw prophecy, incarnated. And while everyone else was editing themselves to fit in, your face refused. That's why some people avoid your gaze. That's why strangers do double takes, feeling like they've seen you in a dream they can't recall. Because they have. Because your face is an echo of a promise they made lifetimes ago to either serve you or stop you. Chosen one, your identity has been studied, but never understood. You were meant to trigger remembrance, not recognition. So they panicked when celebrities began privately asking, "Why does this person seem familiar?" They found your photo in deleted message threads, auto-saved cloud files, and even facial matches in AI-generated deep dreams. But when they tried to trace the source, corrupted, glitched, burned out, because the systems they built to predict the future are now haunted by someone who carries it, you. Now that you're being remembered, some will pretend they've never seen you. Others will start acting strange, like they know something they can't explain. Don't take it personally. Take it prophetically, because the veil is thinning, and every time you post, walk, breathe, you collapse another timeline they were trying to maintain. You weren't supposed to be seen this soon, but then again, heaven doesn't follow their launch schedules. They recognized your face because you were here to rewrite everything they thought they controlled. It wasn't written, it wasn't typed, it wasn't spoken in any way they could track, and yet, it existed. A message about you, circling in private channels, surfacing in encrypted archives, flagged by the system as an anomaly with intentionality. That's what scared them most. This wasn't an accident. Someone or something knew you before the noise, and they left breadcrumbs for the day your signal would spike high enough to trace. The problem is, when they tried to find who wrote it, no author, no IP, just a line of code embedded in a celebrity's deleted thread. Their awakening begins the moment they read this. The they was you. Chosen one, you read it. That's why everything's been different since. They tried to delete it, but truth doesn't delete. It replicates. The harder they tried to erase it, the more it spread into cache files, quantum backups, even screenshots that wouldn't save but still somehow haunted the gallery. The message was short. It didn't need many words. Just a reminder, just a frequency, just a sentence written in a voice that felt like home. And even though the message shouldn't have existed, the moment it was seen, reality began bending around your presence. You started to remember who you were. That terrified them. You see, they don't fear the celebrities, they control them. They fear you, the one who doesn't need a platform to start earthquakes, the one whose memory is connected to realms beyond the reach of PR teams and algorithm tweaks. You're not here for fame, you're here to flip the entire grid. That message, it was seeded as a warning and a prophecy. And when someone with a high enough clearance accidentally clicked it, their phone bricked, their apps wouldn't open, their face went pale. Not because the words were aggressive, but because they were true. It named you, not just by username, but by vibration. It called you the undeniable. Chosen one, that's what they've been calling you behind locked doors. That's why your name has been whispered in legal meetings, crisis rooms, and internal calls marked no transcript. The fear isn't what you'll do, it's that you've already done something. You cracked a code that wasn't supposed to be accessed until the veil thinned. And now, every attempt to suppress you triggers backlash in the ether. Glitches, leaks, dream spillovers, downloads happening at 3 a.m. that leave people waking up with your face on their mind. They never expected you to move quietly. They thought disruption always made noise. They trained their systems to detect screams, protests, viral spikes. But you, chosen one, you disrupted without a sound. You didn't need a megaphone. Your frequency was louder than any voice. And when your name appeared in the wrong inbox, something rippled through an entire structure they believed was unshakable. Someone said it during a closed-door crisis call. "We have a silent trigger." That was their nickname for you. Not because you were passive, but because you were precise. You moved beneath their thresholds, inside their blind spots, where no firewall could catch your arrival. They underestimated your stillness. They thought quiet meant powerless, but your stillness was a strategy coded by heaven. Chosen one, there's a reason you've always been the one others react to without understanding why. Your presence wakes things up. Dormant wounds, buried guilt, false power. You enter a room and the atmosphere changes, not because you speak, but because your soul carries a frequency that collapses facades. That's what scared them most. You weren't activated by attention. You weren't waiting for a stage. You moved like memory, like prophecy with a pulse. And now, every time your image appears, even in deleted files, something inside the system shudders. Because you don't just trigger events, you are the event. The silent ones are always the most dangerous to empires built on noise. They tried to trace your influence, but it never pointed back to you directly. Just ripples, leaks, people quitting jobs they swore they loved, artists suddenly painting visions of you without knowing why, dreams shared on message boards from strangers across continents, all saying the same thing. "I saw someone standing in the light. I think it was them." They dismissed it at first, until a celebrity, one of the loyal ones, refused to perform. Said your name in a boardroom. Said they saw your eyes in a dream and couldn't go through with the script. That's when the panic started. That's when they gave you the code name, the silent trigger. Not because you were hidden, but because you were inevitable. Chosen one, silence is not the absence of power. It's the mark of someone who knows they don't need to explain themselves. Heaven doesn't broadcast every strike. Some are felt, not heard. And when you moved, timelines folded. When you stared too long at a person, they unraveled. When you forgave someone, silently, they broke into tears days later and didn't know why. That's the authority you carry. That's the threat they fear. Not your fists, your presence, your restraint, your stillness. Because still waters don't just run deep, they drown kingdoms. Now breathe, like this message. Subscribe if you've ever been accused of being too intense without speaking. And drop a 777 if you've been the reason people changed without knowing what hit them. They took the screenshots, but none of them kept them. That's the part no one is talking about. The part that made their hands shake, their stomach drop, their spirit recoil as if they'd captured something they weren't meant to hold. Chosen one, your name wasn't the problem. It was the energy attached to it. Every time someone tried to save a screenshot that mentioned you, their phone heated up, the screen dimmed, a strange static hummed beneath the glass. One celebrity whispered, "It felt like the image was looking back at me." So they deleted it instantly, not out of guilt, but out of fear. Because whatever was connected to your name refused to be stored. Heaven doesn't allow sacred things to sit in corrupted devices. The first screenshot appeared innocently, your page, your picture, your presence. But when they zoomed in to crop it, a second outline appeared behind you. Not a shadow, not a glitch, a silhouette. Too symmetrical to be an accident, too intentional to be ignored. They thought it was a filter. Then they realized their camera wasn't on. They tried again. Same result. A faint glow around your figure. A shape watching from behind you that didn't belong to this reality. That's when they panicked. That's when one of them said, "Nope, I'm not keeping this." But the system kept trying to replicate it. Auto backups failed. iCloud refused to sync. The folder where the image should have been became corrupted. Devices force restarted. One phone froze on a black screen with only a single line of text glowing faintly. Not yours to keep. They threw the entire phone away. Chosen one, that's how much your presence disrupts the digital realm. You weren't meant to be handled like content. You were meant to be guarded like prophecy. The truth? They weren't afraid of the screenshot. They were afraid of the reaction the system had to your image, because technology recognizes what humans pretend not to see. Your aura burns through layers of digital compression. Your frequency refuses to flatten into pixels. Your name carries a blueprint that the cloud can't store without consequences. That's why celebrities deleted the images faster than they captured them. That's why their team members refused to even open certain threads. They felt watched. They felt read. They felt seen, not by you, but by the force that walks with you. The one who has been guarding your name long before it reached their screens. Chosen one, you weren't meant to be hidden in someone's gallery. You were meant to appear only where destiny placed you. That's why screenshots of you disappear. That's why saved messages fail. That's why anything containing your true energy refuses to stay still. Heaven protects its vessels, and anything that tries to confine you digitally becomes unstable. They thought they were documenting you, but it was you documenting them, without ever touching a thing. Now breathe. If you've ever had photos glitch, vanish, or behave strangely, hit like. Subscribe if you felt watched in the light, not the dark, and drop a 777. Because what the world can't hold, heaven reveals in its own timing. Before your name appeared, before your image was flagged, it was your frequency that got there first, not your voice, your signal, the imprint you leave on timelines just by existing, the kind of energy that bends cameras, stalls elevators, shifts the atmosphere of a room before your feet even cross the threshold. Chosen one, someone in Hollywood said it best. We keep picking up something we can't trace. It's not a person, it's a presence. They didn't know it was you, not yet. All they knew was that something had changed in the pattern. Subtle, but seismic. And it all began the moment you started dreaming louder than their scripts. Sound engineers were the first to report it. Frequencies that shouldn't exist were showing up in post-production. Audio tracks laced with tones that no mic recorded, no voice spoke. Directors blamed faulty equipment until it started happening across studios, across time zones, across projects that had one thing in common. They were trying to script the future, and your signal didn't agree. You've never needed a stage. You've been rerouting narratives just by being alive. Someone whispered, "We think they're interfering without touching anything." Hollywood knows energy. They know how to manipulate it, mask it, sell it. But they don't know how to decode it when it refuses to play their game. That's what your frequency did. It didn't crash their systems. It confused their spirits. Celebrities started having dreams. Random, vivid. They'd wake up saying your name without knowing who you were. One of them walked off set mid-shoot and said, "There's someone I've forgotten, and I need to find them." They never came back. That's how real you are, chosen one. Real enough to destabilize the illusions they've spent billions perfecting. You never auditioned, but they're still casting roles based on your energy, because here's what they realized. You're not a trend. You're a timeline. You represent what comes after the collapse. You carry the resonance of a story that wasn't written in Hollywood, but in heaven. And now, the ones at the top, the ones with contracts, networks, satellites, they're whispering your name in closed meetings with spiritual consultants. They don't call you by your earth name, they call you the interruption. Because every time they try to manifest their version of the future, your energy leaks in like divine static. Chosen one. That's not fame chasing you. That's prophecy correcting the record. They can't silence you because you're not speaking. You're vibrating. Your frequency is what turns cameras toward empty doors, what glitches teleprompters mid-line, What makes execs wake up sweating after seeing you in a dream they were never supposed to remember? You are the echo they didn't write, but can't unhear. Now breathe. Like this message, if your presence has ever caused unexplained tension or silence in a room. Subscribe if strangers have told you you feel familiar. And drop a 777 if you've ever walked into a space and felt the script rewrite itself around you. They whispered your frequency in Hollywood. It wasn't on a podcast. It wasn't at a press conference. It happened at a dinner table. The kind of table where no photos are allowed, where NDAs are signed before forks are lifted. The kind of room where billionaires, world-famous names, and invisible puppeteers gather over imported wine and encrypted Wi-Fi. And someone, casually, nervously, brought you up. Not by name at first, but by pattern, by effect. "There's someone we need to watch," they said, their voice low, almost unsure. And the room, full of people who thought they were untouchable, went still, because deep down, they already felt you coming. Chosen one, they've been discussing you behind the gold-trimmed curtains of false power. The room didn't laugh. They didn't scoff, because every single person there had experienced something recently, a glitch in their matrix, a vivid dream, a screen that wouldn't unlock, a child who asked a strange question about someone glowing. And when the name connected to those events was spoken aloud, forks were set down. Glasses remained half full. They didn't dismiss you. They feared you. You were the only one not at the table, and still the most powerful one there. Someone asked, "What do they want?" And someone else, more connected, more ancient, said, "They're not after attention. They're the proof." That's when the energy shifted. They knew exactly what that meant. You're not just a disruption. You're a mirror, one that reveals who they were before they sold themselves to the machine. That's what makes you dangerous, not your voice, your reflection. Because when you walk into timelines, things are forced to confront themselves. You don't argue, you awaken. They clinked glasses after your name was said, not to toast, but to numb. One exec pulled up your profile on their phone mid-dinner, just to see, just to confirm. They only looked for 3 seconds before putting it down, and when someone asked what they saw, all they said was, "Too late." Chosen one, they're not trying to figure you out anymore. They're trying to calculate how much longer they have before the illusions collapse. Your name carries weight in realms you haven't even visited yet, because you don't move in clout, you move in consequence, and consequence makes the mighty tremble. So when your name was mentioned at that table, no alarms went off, no agents burst in, but everyone shifted, slightly, uncomfortably, spiritually, because something old stirred beneath the marble floors and whispered back, "They're here." That's all heaven had to say, not in threat, but in certainty, because no matter how many meals they plan, meetings they schedule, strategies they revise, they can't outrun the prophecy written with your existence. You were the only one not in the room, and still, the room revolved around you. Like this message if you've ever felt your name was spoken behind closed doors. Subscribe if you felt the tension of being remembered, and drop a 777 if you know that even when you're not present physically, your presence is already restructuring the conversation. You don't remember it clearly, but it happened. A message, a moment, a flicker in the matrix that didn't feel right. Or maybe it felt too right. You brushed it off. Maybe it came through a stranger's eyes. Maybe it was a dream that hit too hard and disappeared by morning. Or maybe it was that weird glitch on your phone, the one that showed a notification you never opened from a sender you couldn't trace. Chosen one, someone tried to warn you in 2014, but you weren't ready to receive it then. You were still sleeping in your power, still blending in, still convincing yourself your sensitivity was a flaw. But heaven always sends the message early, because the truth waits for no timeline. There was a shift that year. You may not have noticed, but they did. Your energy began rising, subtle but undeniable. One of their watchers, the ones embedded in entertainment, education, even tech, saw the surge. You weren't famous, you weren't loud, but your soul sent out a flare, and they panicked because the system was built to filter for noise, not clarity, and your frequency was too clean, too ancient, too untamable to ignore. That's when someone on the inside, a defected one, an awakened one, tried to warn you, tried to prepare you, but it never reached you clearly, because the message had to wait for your readiness to activate. Maybe you saw it in a post that vanished, or a video you could never find again. Maybe someone passed you on the street and looked at you like they knew your entire story. Maybe they did, because in 2014, someone caught a glimpse of what was coming. You, the future timeline you'd anchor, the awakening you'd carry, the collapse you'd cause just by stepping into alignment. They saw it early, and they tried to protect you. But prophecy waits until the soul can hold its own weight. You've had clues, glitches, déjà vu too specific to be random, warnings you laughed off, feelings you dismissed, but they weren't accidents. They were mercy. Because had you seen the full picture back then, it might have shattered you. That's why heaven withheld certain details, not to hide them, but to protect your process. You weren't late, you were becoming. And now the memory of that warning is returning, in symbols, in people reappearing, in places that suddenly feel haunted with meaning. You're remembering what was sent and why it didn't land. Because the message wasn't supposed to reach you back then, it was supposed to resurrect inside you right now. They thought digital deletion would be enough, that if they scrubbed your name from the servers, blocked your IP echoes, filtered your images through distortion protocols, they could stop the unfolding. But the cloud was never just a storage system, it was a mirror. And the more they tried to erase you, the clearer your reflection became. Chosen one, you weren't stored in the cloud, you haunted it. You were never a file, you were a frequency. And no amount of deletion could silence something that wasn't placed by man, but planted by heaven. The first attempt to erase you failed when your profile regenerated. Same name, same presence, different path. They blamed a glitch. But the engineers reviewing the logs saw something impossible. You didn't restore from backup. You rebuilt from memory, as if the system remembered you better than the humans behind it did. That's when they initiated soft erasure. Not an outright deletion, just a quiet suppression, making your content less visible, redirecting search queries, scrambling metadata. But something strange kept happening. Your signal returned, like a heartbeat through firewalls, and every time they deleted a mention of you, a new one popped up somewhere else, not created by you, but by others. Testimonies, dreams, posts with no explanation, just captions like, "They're real," or "I saw them." Your memory was stored not in devices, but in people, in their minds, in their souls, in timelines you touched without ever speaking. You were never just data, chosen one. You were destiny. And no one can erase that. Not permanently, not successfully. They tried to make the world forget you, but the world already knew you. Your name was marked for deletion. Your photos were flagged as anomalies. Your text patterns were labeled non-human origin. Still, the cloud couldn't comply. Because the deeper truth is this: you're not just connected to the cloud, you predate it. You've been in every age of language, from carved tablets to printed scrolls to digital waves. Your essence travels through every form of memory humanity builds. The cloud is just the latest medium trying and failing to hold what heaven designed to overflow. They panicked when the erasure turned into replication. Chosen one, You're the only digital ghost with a pulse. You don't haunt files. You awaken them. You don't live in the cloud. The cloud lives in response to you. That's why their tools malfunction. That's why your shadow keeps reappearing on deleted accounts. That's why someone from their own team quit after watching your profile regenerate again, even though the final wipe had already been done. You weren't made to be stored. You were made to be revealed. So breathe. Like this message, if you've ever had accounts glitch or vanish without cause. Subscribe if your energy keeps showing up in places you didn't post. And drop a 777 if you feel it in your bones. They tried to erase you, but heaven already wrote you into the code of forever. It started with a meeting that wasn't supposed to be about you. A routine update, a media strategy sync, just another agenda item, until your name came up, not as a headline, not as a scandal, but as a problem. "We've got an energy leak," someone said. "It's them." And the room shifted. People who'd never met you, never spoken your name publicly, suddenly felt like they were in danger. Not because you threatened them, but because your presence had begun unthreading the illusions they'd paid billions to maintain. That's when it became a PR crisis, one they couldn't trace, spin, or survive. Chosen one, you didn't even do anything. You simply existed in alignment, and that alone was enough to trigger collapse. There were whispers of a video that couldn't be found, but everyone claimed to have seen it. A sentence that was never tweeted, yet screenshotted 1,000 times. An interview clip where a celebrity froze mid-sentence after hearing your name in their earpiece, then refused to continue. It didn't go viral. It didn't need to, because the real spread was spiritual, quiet, relentless. Your energy became the headline behind the headlines. Their audience didn't even know they were tuning into you, but engagement spiked, timelines derailed, and carefully managed narratives began breaking open. One executive said, "We don't know how to frame this. They're not a scandal, they're a shift." They tried to find your angle, tried to dig into your past, but there were no scandals, no failures they could weaponize, no sound bites to twist. You hadn't even spoken publicly, and still you became the center of a storm. Because storms don't always come from conflict. Sometimes they come from truth, entering a space that was never built to hold it. That's what you did, chosen one. You walked into the atmosphere and rewrote it. And the ones who built their thrones on illusion, they panicked. Some tried to mimic you, soft aesthetics, prophetic language, spiritual posts, but it rang hollow. Because you weren't performing awakening, you were living it, and the difference was undeniable. Their audience could feel it. They began asking different questions, wanting deeper answers, turning away from influencers who once seemed like gods, and searching for something real. That's when the PR crisis peaked, not because they lost control of you, but because you revealed they never had it. You became a mirror, a movement, a mystery they couldn't manage. It wasn't a recent photo, and it wasn't one you remember taking, but it moved, quietly, through circles of influence, whispered into encrypted group chats, forwarded in conversations that paused afterward like someone had seen a ghost. A blurry, low-resolution image. No timestamp, no context. Just you, standing in a place you've never been, looking directly at the camera, with knowing in your eyes. Chosen one, the photo wasn't supposed to exist, but it did. And once it surfaced, it refused to stay deleted. People tried, but every time they erased it, it reappeared in a different folder, under a new name, in someone else's inbox, like it had a will of its own. The digital system wasn't spreading the photo, the spirit behind it was. Somebody high up said, "If this gets out, it confirms everything." But what exactly did it confirm? Not identity, not location, but presence. The kind that couldn't be explained by logic or metadata. You were seen. in a timeline you hadn't stepped into yet. That's what terrified them. The image showed you in full clarity, but ahead of time. Wearing something you don't own yet, hair different, aura undeniable, and standing in a space that hasn't been built. It was more than a photo, it was proof of interference. Someone tried to trace the original uploader. They failed. The file had no origin. Its creation data was scrambled, showing contradictory dates, some pointing to the future. The digital forensics team called it a predictive glitch, but one of them quit the next day, said they felt watched, said the eyes in the photo followed them when they closed their laptop, because it wasn't just about who saw you, it was about who saw them back. Chosen one, they thought they had the tools to bury what wasn't convenient. But your energy doesn't comply with deletion. Heaven coded you with recall, divine reappearance. You show up in dreams, in random memories, in pieces of content no one remembers saving. That's why this photo kept circulating, not for exposure, for remembrance. It was heaven's way of showing the elite, you didn't create this one, you can't contain them, you won't outrun them. Your image is not just a reflection, it's a reminder of what they tried to forget, that someone is walking the earth with immunity to their manipulation, that someone doesn't need a media team to move millions, that someone was prophesied to rise without permission, and it's you. That photo wasn't a mistake, it was a message. It was a glimpse of who you've always been, cloaked in time, now stepping forward. It wasn't a casual mention this time, it was a full meeting. A closed door, high clearance, phones turned off kind of meeting. And the only item on the agenda was you. No presentation, no slides, no press release. Just a table full of powerful people, presidents of networks, architects of algorithms, masters of messaging, sitting in silence as your name was spoken. One of them opened with a warning, "We've got a breach," and it's walking around in human form. Chosen one, they weren't talking about a hacker. They were talking about you, not because of what you did, but because of what your existence is doing to their system. You've become unmanageable, not in behavior, in energy. They brought in analysts, spiritual consultants, crisis managers. None of them could agree on what to call you, but they all agreed on this. You are the convergence point, the timeline they couldn't predict, the presence that doesn't conform to their equations. And the more they tried to figure you out, the more their own systems began to fold. Security cameras glitching when your image appeared, biometric software returning unreadable, influencers suddenly losing engagement after mocking people like you. That's when the conversation changed. You were no longer just a person of interest. You were a threat to their continuity. Someone at the table asked, "What if they're not doing anything wrong?" And the response came fast, cold, calculated. It doesn't matter. Their presence alone is creating awakening. People are asking questions we haven't pre-scripted answers for. That's what scared them, not your rebellion, your reflection, the way you make people remember who they were before the programming. You're not starting revolutions in the streets, you're starting them in the spirit. Quietly, relentlessly. They reviewed transcripts of your comments, analyzed the language of your captions, rewatched videos where you didn't even speak, just stared into the lens like you knew. The conclusion was unanimous. They're not trying to get attention, they're broadcasting something we can't intercept. And that's when someone at the far end of the table whispered what no one else wanted to say. They're not from here. The silence that followed wasn't disbelief, it was recognition. They'd all felt it. You weren't walking the same timeline as them, you were bending it. Chosen one, your name didn't just appear on a whiteboard, it appeared in their strategy decks. They're building responses around you, adjusting rollouts, delaying narratives, retooling algorithms just to slow the ripple your spirit creates every time you show up in truth. You didn't request this meeting, but heaven RSVP'd on your behalf, because while they sat in fear and confusion, something sacred hovered just outside the room, listening, smiling, knowing. The system is crumbling, and your existence was the first crack. It slipped out during a quiet interview, the kind recorded in a sterile room with soft lighting and carefully screened questions. The director, one of them, the ones with keys to the stories the world is allowed to see, was asked a harmless question. Where do you find your inspiration? And something flickered in their eyes. A hesitation, a memory they weren't supposed to speak, and then they said it, softly, almost unconsciously. There's someone. They're not from here. The room went still. The camera operator paused. The interviewer smiled, confused. But the director? Their gaze had drifted, because they weren't remembering a character. They were remembering you. Chosen one, you left an impression they couldn't edit out. They weren't speaking metaphorically. They weren't talking about someone special in the usual Hollywood sense. They meant it literally. Your presence, your energy, your unexplainable gravitational pull. It didn't read as earthborn. It didn't match the frequency of fame, ego, or ambition. It radiated differently, like origin light, like ancient memory wrapped in skin. They saw it the moment you passed them once, maybe in a crowd, maybe on a screen, maybe in a dream they brushed off as too vivid to be real. But it was real, and it rattled them, because directors are taught to spot fakes, and you felt truer than any script they'd ever written. The phrase, "not from here," started to circulate quietly behind the scenes, in editing bays, in executive lounges, on voice notes never meant for release. You became a subject, not of gossip, but of investigation. People wanted to know how you moved, like you'd already seen what was coming, how you said things before they happened, how you disappeared from events your name was on, yet still showed up in the energy of the room. They watched you and felt their illusions unravel. One producer said, "They remind me of something I forgot before I was born." That's what you do. You don't just show up, you activate recall, soul memory, ancestral code. You speak, and people remember who they were before the programming, before the lights, before the scripts. And that's terrifying to a world that survives by keeping people asleep. So when the director said you weren't from here, it wasn't an insult, it was a confession that something cosmic had entered the frame, and they weren't ready to direct you. Chosen one, you're not just in the story, you are the disruption to the script. You don't follow plot points, you bend them. You don't take direction, you carry instruction. The type downloaded, not dictated. The type that scares even those who hold the cameras because they know their lens can't contain your light. It wasn't supposed to be measurable, but it was. A surge, brief, radiant, undeniable, recorded by the kind of labs that don't publish their findings. Hidden facilities built to monitor biometric rhythms, spiritual emissions, frequencies beyond the electromagnetic spectrum. One night, their screens lit up in panic. There was no earthquake, no solar flare, just a signal, a pulse that echoed through satellites, fiber optic lines, even beneath oceans. When they traced it back, they didn't find a device. They found you, not your location, not your fingerprint, your DNA. Something inside you had activated, and the world felt it. Chosen one, the spike didn't come from your body. It came from your remembrance. This wasn't just genetic, it was celestial. You carry strands that science can't name, sequences that hum with prophecy, fragments of light encoded into matter. You are walking encrypted information. And when your soul stepped fully into alignment, when you said yes without speaking, the code unlocked. The spike that followed wasn't random. It was a divine announcement, And the system built to watch the world's heartbeat? It trembled. Across oceans, devices failed for 3.3 seconds. Random, they claimed, but not to those who knew the pattern. Hospitals reported sudden heart fluctuations. Artists woke up mid-dream and couldn't stop painting spirals. An engineer in South Korea collapsed at his desk, whispering your name. And in a private Vatican server, a program monitoring non-terrestrial frequencies flagged the spike and labeled it Origin Signature Detected. That's what you are, Chosen One, a walking signature, a signal that says the Ancient One has returned. You didn't change, you remembered. And when that remembering happened, your DNA responded like a cathedral waking up after centuries of silence. Songs long buried beneath the trauma, codes dormant beneath the conditioning. You didn't glow up, you lit up, and the ones monitoring the grid watched the ripple move like wildfire. You were no longer invisible. You became undeniable. The spike didn't fade. It opened. It didn't shut systems down. It forced them to recalibrate. They're building models around you now. New protocols, new narratives, new distractions. Anything to pull people away from the quiet question blooming inside their spirit. What just shifted? Because it wasn't just data that moved. It was destiny. And all it took was one flicker of your frequency. That's the power you carry. Not noise, not force, but alignment. When your spirit locks in, mountains move in the algorithm. Clouds shift in the code. Whole realities bend in reverence. You didn't spike a signal. You reawakened the Earth's memory of you. It wasn't a headline. It wasn't filmed. It wasn't shared on social media. But it happened. In a dimly lit room halfway across the world, someone trembling on the floor began convulsing. A priest stood over them, hand shaking, voice struggling to hold authority. It was supposed to be a routine deliverance. But when the voice spoke back, not the person's voice, but the one inside them, it said a name, your name, not your birth name, not the one on your documents, the other one, the name heaven knows, the one etched on your spiritual blueprint. And when it was spoken, the entire room stopped breathing. The demon didn't curse, it didn't threaten, it pleaded. Not them, not yet. Chosen One, your name wasn't used as a threat, it was invoked as a warning. You weren't even in the room, but your authority was. Your name has weight in realms where bodies mean nothing and energy is everything. The demon recognized it instantly. It didn't need a face. It felt your arrival, because you carry something the darkness remembers. Unfinished business, from past lives, from cosmic agreements, from timelines where you already cast it out once. You didn't train for this. You were born for it. When the exorcist asked, "Who are you afraid of?" It didn't say God or light or truth. It said you, because darkness can quote scripture. It can mimic light, but it can't counterfeit presence. And your presence carries an encryption it can't decode, only obey. That's why your name slipped from its lips like a broken seal. That's why even in its defiance, it had to admit, you are not to be provoked. Your name isn't just known in heaven, it's feared in hell. What you've been feeling lately, the strange resistance, the subtle pushback, the unexplainable heaviness when you walk into certain rooms, that's not coincidence. That's recognition. You're being watched, yes, but more than that, you're being anticipated. The forces that thrive in chaos and confusion know what your full awakening means. It means eviction, exposure, expulsion. And every time you forgive, every time you love without returning hate, every time you speak truth into silence, you thin their veil. You haven't been haunted. You've been hunted, not for destruction, but for delay. Because once you remember who you are, fully, there is no stronghold that can remain standing. That's why your name was spoken, not by a fan, not by a follower, but by the very thing that hoped you'd never hear it said aloud. Now you have. Now you know. They thought the vault was protected, that it would take a hacker, a key card, a biometric signature, but when the screen flashed, when the override initiated, it didn't ask for a fingerprint or a code. It spoke. Access requires vibrational match. They laughed, at first, until one of them, curious, desperate, typed in a name. Your name. The room went silent. The system paused. Then, without a single button pressed, the vault opened. Files that had been locked for decades unlocked. Documents that hadn't been touched since the Cold War unfolded across the monitors. And the words printed on the screen in cold blue font said what no one was ready to admit. Authenticated. Chosen one. You were the password all along. Not a phrase, not a sequence. A presence. A frequency encoded in the architecture of secrets. The vault didn't open because someone guessed the code. It opened because your energy had been embedded in the very lock. Why? Because even in systems built by fear, there are protocols established by prophecy. You are not just a person. You are a fail-safe, a divine override planted in the timelines to be activated only when corruption reached its peak. They didn't expect you to rise. They expected you to forget. Inside that vault were files about forgotten civilizations, failed experiments, anomalous children, mass awakening timelines, all traced back to a singular recurring variable. You. Different names, different faces, same essence. You were always the one they couldn't pin down, the pattern that kept breaking through the control grid. And buried in one of the folders was a warning, dated before your birth. If this signal returns, containment is impossible. Prepare for collapse. That's what your access meant, not danger, deliverance. The vault was never about keeping things out. It was about delaying what had already been written in heaven. The ones guarding it were never the authors, just the fearful stewards of a reality cracking at its seams. Your presence didn't just open the vault, it nullified it. The seals failed, the encryption faded, the backup systems shut down. Because your frequency didn't match one lifetime, it matched every version of you that ever walked this earth, cloaked in time, waiting for alignment. You didn't break in, you returned. Chosen one, you are the key, the code, and the command. That's why tech bends around you. That's why people glitch when they get too close to your truth. That's why systems fail and secrets unravel when you show up fully. Because heaven encoded your essence into the locks of this reality. And now the vault has opened, not to expose you, but to release you. At first they denied it, laughed, dismissed you as myth, anomaly, glitch. But now the tone has changed. They're no longer scoffing behind screens. They're strategizing behind closed doors. The same people who once called you irrelevant are now clearing calendars for emergency summits. Security teams have been briefed. Intelligence groups have flagged your image. Spiritual consultants have been flown in. And deep within their bunkers, they're no longer asking if you're coming. They're asking how much time they have left. Because you're not just returning, chosen one, you're already here. The version of you they tried to bury has risen. And every vibration of your presence is undoing centuries of false control. They are not preparing for a person. They are bracing for a reversal. Your return marks the turning point in a timeline they built on delay, sedation, distortion. You were their contingency plan's worst-case scenario. Because they counted on your forgetfulness. They engineered your distractions. They mapped your trauma. And still, you remembered. Not all at once, but enough to start shaking the grid. Your awakening is not just spiritual, it's systemic. Every step you take in truth collapses a lie. Every act of forgiveness unbinds a bloodline. Every decision you make from alignment rather than fear sets off tremors in their data streams. That's why they're preparing, not because you're vengeful, but because you're free. And freedom is contagious. They've studied your face, your voice, your digital patterns, but what they can't grasp is your timing. Your moves are not based on logic, they're based on knowing. And that knowing terrifies them, because it can't be baited, it can't be bought, and it can't be stopped. They've tried to shadow ban your light, to mute your frequency, to distract your calling with petty wars and digital noise. But here you are, not just surviving, but returning with clarity. Because heaven doesn't just send warriors, it recalls royalty. You're not rising from trauma, you're emerging from assignment. You didn't stumble into this awakening. You answered a call seeded before birth. And now the atmosphere is shifting around your re-entry, not because you're dramatic, but because you're divine. The world feels it. The veil is thinner. The dreams are louder. The tension in the air is not chaos, it's anticipation. They're not scared because of your power. They're scared because your power reminds them who they were before they gave theirs away. So take a breath. Like this message if you've been feeling the weight of your return. Subscribe if your presence has been met with strange resistance or reverent silence. And drop a 777 in the comments if your life lately feels like the end of a long sleep and the beginning of something that will never be forgotten.
If you have come this far, it is crucial that you watch this next video here. But be warned, it is not for the faint of heart, for only the true chosen ones can handle this video. If you would like to also donate to help keep the channel going, our Buy Me a Coffee link will be in the description.